I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here we are. It all started on what was supposed to be a peaceful weekend at my lake cabin. Quiet water, fresh air, no drama. But that calm shattered the moment our local HOA's most notorious busybody, the one we jokingly and not so jokingly call HOA Karen, showed up uninvited. And when I say uninvited, I mean she literally broke in. Now this wasn't just any ordinary cabin break-in. What Karen didn't know and what makes this story so insane is that the cabin wasn't empty. In fact, two very important people were inside at that very moment: the state attorney general and his wife. Yup, not only were they close family, friends, but they had come to the cabin for some much-needed downtime, hoping for peace and privacy. You can imagine their shock when a stranger in HOA colors burst through the door, demanding to inspect the place for supposed code violations. The moment was tense. Karen thought she was flexing her neighborhood power, storming in like she owned the place. But what she didn't realize was that she had just walked into a legal nightmare of her own making. The Attorney General didn't reveal who he was right away. He just sat there, calmly watching her unravel, giving her enough rope to hang herself. And just when you think it couldn't get worse for her, it does. Because what happened next not only changed the way the HOA operates, but also put Karen right in the middle of a statewide investigation. Stick around, because you won't believe how far this spiraled once the truth started to come out. Karen had always been the kind of person who treated the HOA like her personal empire. She wasn't even on the board, just someone who had way too much time and an obsession with enforcing rules that didn't even exist. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She'd measure grass height, take photos of porch furniture, and send weekly complaint emails about the most ridiculous things. But no one expected her to go as far as trespassing on private property, especially not my family's lakeside cabin, miles away from her jurisdiction. What's strange is how she found the place. The cabin is tucked deep in the woods off a dirt road with no signs, and it's not part of any HOA. That's what made this feel less like some nosy neighbor moment and more like something calculated. Did someone tip her off? Was she trying to dig up dirt for some personal gain? Or was it really just another Karen moment gone way too far? The state ag and his wife had just finished their coffee by the fireplace when she barged in. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight through the front door like she owned it, clipboard in hand, spouting off something about unauthorized lake usage and environmental concerns. She didn't even realize who she was talking to, just kept going, pointing at the deck, the dock, the fire pit outside. Meanwhile, the AG's wife sat there, stunned, watching the scene unfold like it was a bad TV show. What Karen didn't know was that her every word was being quietly noted, not just by witnesses, but by someone who had the legal power to make it count. And just as she began inspecting the kitchen sink for some made-up violation, things started to take a turn she couldn't have seen coming. The thing about Karen-ish, she doesn't back down. Once she gets something in her head, she runs with it like she's on some kind of mission. That day, she wasn't just acting like a nosy neighbor. She came in with an attitude, a list of supposed violations, and even had her phone recording, like she was building a case for court. She pointed at the outdoor grill, complained about the dock being too close to the waterline, and accused the cabin of violating some community beautification code. The irony: this cabin isn't even within her HOA boundaries. It's not governed by any HOA at all. Meanwhile, the Attorney General sat quietly on the couch, letting her go on. He didn't say a word, didn't even flinch. His wife gave me a quick look, the kind that said, "Just let this play out." It was honestly surreal. Karen had no idea she was standing in front of the highest-ranking legal officer in the state. The same guy who oversees property law enforcement, by the way. And here she was, accusing him of illegal structures and threatening to file a formal neighborhood complaint. But that's when I started to wonder, was this really just Karen being Karen? Or was there more going on behind the scenes? Someone must have told her about the cabin, someone who wanted to stir up trouble, maybe someone who had a problem with me, or didn't like that I wasn't part of the HOA at all. And if that's true, then this wasn't just a random incident. It was targeted, a setup. Karen made her way into the back sunroom, still filming everything like she was on some kind of investigative special. She was muttering to herself about drainage permits and environmental compliance, like she had memorized a list of buzzwords just to sound official. The tension in the room was thick, but still, no one stopped her. The Attorney General leaned back in his chair, hands folded, eyes following her every move. His wife sipped her tea, calm but clearly alert. I stood near the kitchen, watching it all unfold like I wasn't even the property owner, just a witness to something bigger brewing. Then Karen spotted the framed photo on the mantel. It was a picture of me, the ag, and his wife taken at a public event a few months earlier. For a split second, her voice trailed off. Her eyes narrowed. You could almost see the gears turning in her head, trying to process what she was looking at. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. I don't care who you're friends with, she snapped. Rules are rules, and this property is in violation. That's when the AG stood up, not in anger, not aggressively, just calm and deliberate. Karen froze mid-sentence. He hadn't said a single word since she walked in, and now his voice cut through the air like a switch flipping. Would you mind repeating that last part for the record? He asked, looking straight at her. Karen blinked, confused. For the record, she repeated, suddenly unsure. And then the room went silent. No one moved. Karen looked around suddenly, realizing she might have just crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. Whatever bravado she had walked in with, it started to crack. And none of us were about to stop what was coming next. Before Karen could answer the Attorney General's question, her phone buzzed loudly in her hand. She glanced down, and her face dropped. For the first time since she barged in, she looked genuinely rattled. She quickly silenced the phone, but not before I saw the caller ID it was someone from the HOA board. Now that was strange. What were they doing calling her in the middle of her little inspection? And why did she look like she'd just seen a ghost? The ag noticed too. He didn't push, just observed. That silence hung heavy in the air. Karen finally muttered something about following up later and turned like she was about to leave. But then something even stranger happened. She walked over to the back door and opened it, not to exit, but to wave someone in. A man in business clothes stepped onto the porch. I'd never seen him before, but Karen introduced him like this was all part of some coordinated visit. She called him Mr. Daniels from Code Compliance, said they were here to document environmental infractions. The ag and I exchanged a quick glance. This wasn't random anymore. This was organized, a plan. And it wasn't just about HOA drama or nosy neighbors. It was starting to look like an attempt to pin something on us. But what? Mr. Daniels pulled out a notepad, started asking strange, pointed questions about property lines, dock permits, even water usage rights on the lake. The weird part, none of it had anything to do with HOA regulations. These were state-level concerns, and that's when the AG's face changed. Calm turned to concern. Whatever they were trying to do, it went deeper than a cabin complaint. And I had a feeling someone with power had more than just rules in mind. They had a motive. The AG took a slow step forward and asked Mr. Daniels for his credentials. At first, the man hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he pulled out an ID, but the moment the AG saw it, his entire posture shifted. He calmly took out his own badge and laid it on the table beside him. Karen's face went pale. She looked at the badge, then at Mr. Daniels, and her mouth dropped open. The AG's voice was calm, but firm as he said, "You're impersonating a state compliance officer. That's a felony." The room froze. Daniels tried to backtrack, claiming he was just there in a consulting role, but it was too late. The AG's wife had already dialed the sheriff's office. Karen stammered, insisting she didn't know he was fake, that she thought he was legitimate because someone on the HOA board gave her his contact. But her story started to fall apart fast. Turns out, the HOA board had been quietly pressuring outlying landowners like me to voluntarily submit to their guidelines. When I refused to join, someone tried to build a case that I was harming the environment, hoping I'd give in or get fined into submission. Karen, hungry for control, was their perfect messenger, but involving a fake official. That was their mistake. Just as the deputies arrived, Karen sat on the edge of the porch, completely silent. Daniels was cuffed and taken in, but the real twist. A follow-up investigation uncovered emails between 2 HOA board members and Daniels, proving they coordinated the whole thing. And one of those names, a current candidate running for county office. They tried to take my cabin and my rights, but they exposed themselves instead. I didn't just keep my land. I helped bring down a crooked little power game. One rule at a time. After everything calmed down, the cabin finally felt like a peaceful retreat again. The lake was still. The sun was dropping behind the trees, and for the first time in days, I could actually take a breath. The Attorney General and his wife stayed for one more night, mostly to make sure everything was documented correctly. Before leaving, he shook my hand and said, "You did the right thing by staying calm." A lot of people would have lost it. That meant more to me than he probably realized. Karen ended up resigning from every volunteer position she held in the community. Not because she was forced to, but because the embarrassment became too much. The HOA tried to distance themselves from the whole thing, claiming they had no knowledge of the impersonation or pressure tactics. But the emails said otherwise, and once they surfaced, the board faced major backlash from residents. A few of them stepped down. The candidate tied to Daniels quietly dropped out of the county race without explanation. As for me, I kept the cabin. No fines, no restrictions, no HOA rules. Just a piece of land I loved and had every right to enjoy. The experience reminded me how important it is to know your rights and to stand your ground, even when the pressure feels overwhelming. Too many people let small power structures bully them into silence. But if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. That quiet spot by the lake became even more meaningful after all this. It wasn't just about peace and scenery anymore. It was about earning that peace, protecting what's yours, and never underestimating how far some folks will go for control. But when you stand tall with truth on your side, even the loudest noise can't shake your ground.